So welcome to this month's developer forum. So this month it's the Laurie show with accompanying members of the core team, I think. So yeah, we're going to cover two topics today, which kind of naturally blend together a bit. So I think first Laurie's going to introduce some proposed, I think at this stage, it's fair to say, changes to some of the caching infrastructure in some of the core Bioconductor packages. And the impacts this might have on people's existing code and things. And then that kind of naturally leads into how making changes to these can affect other packages, which is part of our build and release cycle and things. So we'll also be discussing the kind of proposed cycle for the next upcoming release over the next month or so. And hopefully that's going to be kind of a question and answer session. So if people in the audience have questions about what they need to do with their package or things that might affect them and things, please feel free to ask questions when we get to that point. I kind of want it to be an interactive discussion rather than just a presentation. So we'll see how that goes. But Laurie, feel free to take it away.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep, that's good.
So the first topic of the day is the updates to the BioC FileCache, AnnotationHub, and ExperimentHub default caching location. It was announced on the mailing list and the support site, and we thought it might be nice to kind of go over what the changes are and what kind of consequence that could have on existing packages in code. So basically what has changed is we wanted to get rid of the external dependency on our adapters, since R introduced their own caching mechanism in tools with our user dir. So the switch comes from changing these locations, and the default location that each of these generates is slightly different, which means that the default caching location in BioC FileCache, AnnotationHub, and ExperimentHub would change. Right now, we've implemented it in Devel in BioC 3.13. We went back a little bit, so what you'll get is this sort of warning message. I used the BioC FileCache as an example here, and you'll get that there was a deprecation of the caching location. It will give you the location of the problematic cache in question so that you could navigate it to it or find it on your local system, and then a URL pointing to the appropriate help sections in each of the appropriate packages. So right now you'll get a warning, and you'll still be able to use the old default cache location in 3.13, and the proposed change is that then in 3.14 we'll upgrade it to an error with the idea that we want to remove the raptors dependency completely by 3.15. It's worth noting that this really will only affect the cache if you use the default cache. So for instance, package-specific caches are not affected. So if in your package code you defined your own cache by using, like Mike said that I could use his BioMart as an example. So in his code, in the inner workings, he does an raptors user cache dir BioMart. This wouldn't be affected at all. You can still use that cache location. It's not going to produce the warning. It's not going to be deprecated, and it will proceed to work as intended. And then it would be up to you as package maintainers to determine if you're still going to use the raptors location or if you're going to change to tools in your related packages, but that's up to you as maintainers of your own packages. Also, if anyone uses the system environments, variables for caching location, this is also ignored. Relatively new, we had system environments variables for the caching location in AnnotationHub and ExperimentHub, and with this change, we also implemented it in BioC FileCache. So this could be potentially useful for like system admins, where if you wanted to set the environment variable on a system, that then you could use it, and it would continue using that old default location for as long as you want to not produce the warnings. So I was going to kind of take through some just code examples, and also as an example, so this vignette, this is for the BioC FileCache again, so that link will take you to the appropriate vignette sections. And to resolve the conflict, there's basically three sort of options. You can move the files manually into the new caching location, either by going onto your system and moving them directly, and then we've also provided a little bit of R code that will try to do it for you within R that you could run. You could, again, specify that environment variable to point to the old location, and then you can continue using that existing caching location. Or you could delete the old cache and just start completely fresh. We currently have opted not to try to move files over for users or implement this code in any way, just because depending on a user's system and where they are, they may or may not have permissions. They might have permissions only on some of the files. So the potential for leaving it in a very broken state we felt wasn't worth trying to do a few things automatically. And that's kind of the reason why we didn't just try to automatically do it for users. Is my terminal big enough that people can see if it's in this font size, or did I need a bigger font?
It looks good to me. Speak up now if you can't read it.
So just to go through a little bit of options, this home shepherd.cache, as you could see before, is kind of my old caching location, and you can see here, because I've been playing around with them too, I have old default locations for ExperimentHub, BioC-FileCache, AnnotationHub, the BioMart one that was used in example. So again, going through right now, if I did BioC-FileCache and use that default location, it's going to give me that warning that you saw with the link to this vignette. So again, one of the options in there was just simply to move it over to the new location. And you can get the new location by running this command here with the user dir. I'll tell you right now, it's moved into this R location underneath the cache. So you could, or I could, on my Linux system, just do move BioC-FileCache into that R location. And now when I run BioC-FileCache with the default location, it picks up that new location and moved and works as normal, no warnings, and can go on normal. Argument's sake, put back out for a second. If we wanted to do a system variable, the way that I'm going to show right now is not the way that you want to do it, because this is only going to have the environment variable for this terminal session. You'll want to set it in like an R profile or a .bash file somewhere where it's persistent across terminals and across shutting down and restarting your computer. But for temporary purposes for this demo, I'm just going to do it locally here so that it's a single shot. And if I set it to that old caching location where it currently exists or says that it's the problem cache, if I set it as the environment variable for the cache, then it gets ignored. So that would be the way to easily go on using your existing cache forever and not have it run into any errors. And then it still uses that default location with no issues. For argument purposes too, just to show, again, if you had used package-specific code and had set the cache, because the BioC-FileCache has that caching argument, do I have an error somewhere? Sorry. Always the fear with live demos. Okay. So if I specify the cache and then put that into the BioC-FileCache argument, again, even though that's using rfdirs, it was a package-specific cache and is not matching the default of rfdirs BioC-FileCache. So if I pass that in, it's going to still work without error, and your package code isn't going to be affected at all. Since I moved that back out and it's in the old location now here, I did put this example code in the vignette for moving files in R. So you can run this too, and it will try to move the files, and as long as all successful, it will move it into that, that new location for the old and new directories, and then start using that new directory as well. So a couple different options. I think that's all I kind of wanted to say on the caching locations, and then we'll open it up for questions, concerns.
Yep, Aaron here. As you well know, I disagree with the decision to not automatically move these files. I've got thousands of users on our internal systems, right? So, someone's got to move them, and I prefer that the package does it automatically. And I don't see why the permissions issue makes any difference here, because if someone goes and follows option 1, the difference is either you do option 1 for them automatically, or someone goes and copy and pastes the commands for option 1. And either way, if they don't have permissions, their cache is broken, right? And
but then they did it, not us.
Yeah, but I mean, it sort of doesn't matter because we're giving them code to copy and paste, right? It's sort of like, there's no, to the user, from the user's perspective, BiocFileCache, the documentation is still the responsible part, right? I just don't see why we can't. I mean, you can even do it really robustly, right? You can just try to move it, or just basically copy it over. And if it doesn't work, then just make sure that operation is atomic, right? Either the entire cache is copied, or just fail out with an error and say you don't have permissions to move. But
I guess we were worried about trying it and then getting stuck in this interactive state where if it's there is the potential to completely destroy a cache then. And again, we would rather have that in the user's perspective and give all the code in the vignette with the caveat of make sure you have permissions to do this or contact your system admin to do it rather than us destroying a user or system's cache. Because if it's in this, if it gets in this weird broken state where half the files moved, half of them didn't, especially the SQLite file, there's no revision revert.
Right, but what I'm saying is that you can just make sure that the move is atomic, right? That either the entire cache moves or nothing moves. It's you can just, don't even try moving it, right? Just try copying it at first, right? Just try copying everything, and if the copy operation succeeds for all files, then you delete the old cache and you use the new one, right? I mean, sure, you use up twice the disk space, but that's not really a big deal.
Well, maybe not a big deal if you're on an institutional one, but if you're on a home system or something like that, or if you're depending if you're using temp space, or we've run into issues where people have contacted us and they run out of disk space too and don't know about it. So, and that's the original reason why we just didn't have people start over and forget about their old caches or anything. One, because there's no way to combine caches, and two, because depending on the files, they can be huge and that would just waste space on a user system.
The current change, at least for 3.14, when it finally rolls out, is going to be pretty disruptive, right? A lot of people are going to have errors. A lot of people are going to ignore. One, the deprecation warning is a real pain in the ass, right? Because it's you got to go and copy all these lines of code. At the very least, you could give me a one-line command in BioCFileCache that I can just call, right? Why do I have to go to an external web page to figure out what command I should be running?
Hey, Aaron.
Yep. Is this mine? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It sounds like you have a bunch of users who have a very specific set of requirements.
Well, I don't think it's just it's my users. There's users inside the company that I have to take care of, and there's also users of various, SDRNA-seq and Celldex packages and other packages that I'm in charge of, right? And there's enough problems as it is. There's no point introducing more problems that we can't just sort of make them transparently disappear.
I mean, I think the real concern is that if we try to do something automatic, we just half succeed, and we'd really just make more problems.
I just don't see what the concern is, because if you try to, like, the difference between automatic and manual is that the manual one just takes longer for it to fail, right?
No, but the manual one requires that whoever knows the details of the local deployment has to take responsibility for updating the cache repository, as opposed to giving Lori some kind of omniscient understanding of all of the different scenarios that are represented by each person on this call.
Well, I don't agree with that. I think you should just move it. I mean, at least.
I think the problem is that it's so likely that it will fail for your. If Lori moved your cache, it would fail for your system. I think it's just so likely that would be the case.
I'm sympathetic to this idea that an atomic operation could be defined that was actually safe. And you would determine whether the thing could succeed. And if you found that it did not, then you would put the person in the manual situation. You would not destroy the cache until you had actually verified that this operation would take place. Since this is in Devel and is going to be a deprecation and nothing will happen, I think we could take the time to work out Aaron's idea about the atomic operation. Do you see a way forward with that, Aaron? The types of tests you would do in order to make this really, really safe?
I mean, if file copy returns true, right, and then you can access the SQLite file, I think that's fine. There's very few files that are like truly position dependent. It's not like I can't imagine people putting like binaries in there, right? Well, I mean they could, but that's sort of on them.
I would propose that we take this as a project, and eventually we could come up with the one-liner that you're talking about that would automate this and see how it works and try to get as much experimental information on it as we could. Would that be a reasonable compromise? Can we leave things the way they are, but work on something that is more palatable to you over the coming months?
Yes. I just don't want.
I'm not putting it on you. I think it's something that I'm willing to take responsibility for. And I think it's doable, but I'm trying to get to a point which is mutually satisfactory.
I mean, I just the experience from the user should be as convenient as possible, right? Even with class updates, we've got like update object code running since like way back, right? So if people still have serialized S4 vector stuff, a lot of that stuff still works, even though sort of officially it doesn't. But with this kind of change, it's like suddenly when 3.14 rolls out, well, firstly, suddenly it's like people are going to start freaking out because they got this deprecation message when nothing else changed. Which is, annoying enough, but then when 3.14 rolls out, it's like, all the caches are broken, right? Or they just like, they're just gone, right? It's like, depending on how you implement it. And for the sake of just removing one dependency, it's like, well, that's, if you're gonna, that's a pretty cosmetic change to me. And if you're gonna do that, then you better make sure that the backend is totally transparent, right? That's an implementation detail that the user should never have to worry about. I mean, I'm pretty damn sure that 90% of the users, they don't even know what that we're using RFDirs, right? They don't care that the default directory has changed. So, why are we exposing these details to them? We should all be, they should never have to worry about this. I mean, the whole point of using BiocFileCache was that, so I never had to worry about it, right? That's what I think.
As I say, I'm sympathetic to that point of view. We have a limited resources, and I think we're very generous to the users and developers in general. So anticipating that they will ignore these messages and will get themselves into the worst possible situation, I think is worst case planning, and I appreciate the need for doing that. But I think we can try to, keep the software as simple as possible, implement this thing, which actually has more ramifications than just reducing namespace pollution. But I don't really want to go into that. And I agree. I think we should try to do a little more software development to get this to a point where a robust user-facing event is as simple and convenient as possible.
So I think, Vince, you said over the course of several months we could look into this. Is that right? Because at the moment it's in devel, right? So it will become release and this warning.
Yes, I think what I'm talking about is developing a simple approach anticipating the release of 3.14, right? So we're going to deprecate now for 3.13 and go forward with what Laurie has proposed, unless there are absolutely insuperable objections that we get raised here or before 3.13. So far, I'm not hearing that. I know there's unpleasantness, but have you tried this? Are you comfortable that what's being proposed to you is feasible for you? And if it isn't, that's what we really want to know. And then thinking about other users who may have problems, we have to assemble data on that and see whether we can make it even better.
Because we can delay making it the whole stop error warning and keep the deprecation till we come up with a smoother solution or some alternatives, but keep the deprecation message in, since currently, even with the deprecation, you can continue using your old cache, and that was the point of rolling it backwards, and where you get the message, but you can still use the cache as intended right now.
Can I ask for, users that have actually gone through this process to make their caches consistent and not throwing warnings? You have done it, Aaron? Is that what you're showing?
Huh? No, I haven't. But I mean, I don't personally use anything, right? I just, write software that does it. So I can already just anticipate that this is going to be a problem. Right? Judging from how many people complain about strRNA-seq and CellDex now, right? Even in its completely functional state. BioC-FileCache is one thing. I especially don't understand why ExperimentHub and AnnotationHub can't do it transparently, because they download resources anyway. So just re-download them into the new cache, right?
That's one of the, listen, just re-downloading things, it's not something we've spent a lot of time on, but that is actually an expense for the Bioconductor project, because we do it through Amazon CloudFront. So, addressing this issue of excess downloads is a part of this renovation process. And again, I don't really want to go into the details about that, but that particular solution, I think, is quite unattractive. I agree that we're exposing things to the user that they may not be very comfortable with, but we're trying to do it in a way that is actually feasible for most, users that I think are going to be impacted by this. And I think developing data on the store points would be good, and it would be good if people would actually try this out to see how it affects them. You say you don't have any such caches, so you can't provide any data. Okay, but maybe some other people on the call could.
So from my perspective, I always use the environment variable setting already, kind of thing. I have an ExperimentHub environment variable set system-wide on multiple different systems. So I don't know whether that's actually the default for many people. So in our institution, our home drives are really small. We get 800 megabytes. So pretty much anything fills up the cache instantly using the default location. So anybody in our institute has already set this to be somewhere else using some mechanism. So they wouldn't be affected by this because I don't think anybody would be using the defaults for more than a really small amount of data. I don't know if any other people have a use case from their institutions and things.
Well, back when I did analyze data, it was just like BiocFileCache straight out of the box, right? Like for example, a lot of the book instances use BiocFileCache straight out of the box, right? For various resources that aren't captured by ExperimentHub, it's just like BiocFileCache and BFCR path, and that's that. Right? And that sort of depends on where what the build system or what the container was using was configuring. But no extra environment variables, nothing. It's just what it was served up with, as far as I know.
Yeah, I think that's a good test example. So, I have certain deployments of the book in my world, and maybe I'll run into a problem building it. And then, we'll revise in the face of that if we need to.
Well, it sounds like we've exhausted this topic. So I guess if there's no more comments or people have examples from their own worlds, then do we want to move on to the kind of release schedule? I don't know if you've got a slide for it or anything, Laurie.
No, but I can pull it up on the website so everyone knows where to find it. Can you see the website?
Yep.
So off the main website, there's a couple of ways to get to it, but we've put the convenient link here, and it was also announced on the support site and mailing list as well. But you can go to the 3.13 proposed release schedule. I will say because 3.13 depends on R-Devel and R4.1, we have not gotten an official release date for R4.1, so this is all tentative to change. If anything, we probably wouldn't push it up, but if we find that CRAN isn't going to release R4.1, we went off the assumption of the first or second week of May, so we've planned ours for the third week of May. If it looks like theirs is going to be delayed, we'll probably push ours back because we need R4.1 to be released before we can do ours. The first main deadline will be deadline for new package submissions is a week from this Friday, April 23rd. It's not a hard set deadline. Anyone that has submitted packages know that we have a rolling submission, but packages submitted after this date, we're not guaranteeing that we'll get a chance to look at. We'll only look at it if we have time. Anything submitted by this date will guarantee you at least that we give you an initial package review. You'll still have to go through the full review process and have your package accepted and do any revisions that are suggested to your package for acceptance before the deadline and before the release in order to officially be submitted in. But this will at least guarantee you that we'll at least do an initial review of your package and try to work with you to get it into this release. I'm going to try to do a last round of any deprecated packages for 3.13 by Monday, April 26th. Most of the deprecated packages don't have reverse dependencies, but we try to put this out a little bit so that if there are any reverse dependencies, that packages can adapt accordingly. Most of the time at this point, and definitely from after this point, any packages that are identified or request deprecation that have reverse dependencies won't get deprecated until after the release, so that reverse dependencies have the full devel cycle to adjust to those changes and to anticipate being removed. In anticipation for the release, we'll be freezing the current Bioconductor 3.12 versions of the packages and that release on Tuesday, May 4th. So basically, Monday, May 3rd and the morning of Tuesday, May 4th Eastern Standard Time will be your last chance to commit changes to the release 3.12 if your package is failing or you need any adjustments there. After that freeze, we will not accept any changes to packages on the 3.12 branch ever. So it would be important to get any changes you want in. We highly recommend putting changes in by that Friday beforehand, like April 30th, because then you'll get at least one build report on it before the freeze, but you're welcome to do whatever. And I believe Nitesh will send out an email when that branch will actually be frozen and when he's disabling the commits to that branch. We're asking that there's no strong API changes, ideally from this point on, but strongly from May 12th on, to give any packages that rely on your package time to adapt to that. This is when we're calling for the last deadline for new packages to be accepted and enter the manifest. That way they can at least have a build or two on the daily builders in case there's any discrepancies or errors before we do the actual release branching. And that's why we say, again, the Friday before the release, May 14th, we would like everyone passing our command build and check. And you'll be able to submit changes up till Monday, May 17th, but if you want it checked on the build system to make sure anything pushed up is passing, we recommend by Friday, May 14th. On Tuesday, May 18th, we'll be creating the branch. So there will be a point in time where I believe Nitesh will send out the email that commits will be frozen on all branches so that we can branch all the packages. And we'll kick off the daily builder so that on Wednesday, May 19th, we can announce the release. And then there's a couple post-release tasks like the updates to Docker images and AMIs and anything lingering. So that's the general overview of the release cycle.
Looking at the names, most people here are probably pretty experienced with going through a few. I guess if anybody isn't or they have questions about how this process goes, what they might need to do, feel free to unmute and ask your questions now.
Hi, yeah, I might want to do that actually. Well, let's get this one up. Yeah, perfectly. Right. Hello, everyone. So I will be submitting my first package to Bioconductor in the upcoming release. So that's the main reason why I'm here. Yeah, I was just wondering. So I really found the Bioconductor website really useful in the first steps. So getting your package up there in contributions and then having the review, having it accepted. So I've gone through all those steps, but now I was just wondering, is there anything from my side that still has to be done after basically the package has been accepted and it continues to build? Is there anything from the okay, no.
Nope.
I see.
As long as it's building and checking okay and that there are no errors, there's nothing you need to do on your end. We take care of everything. The one thing that you'll want to make sure then is after the release, if you have local copies checked out and linking to Bioconductor, you'll want to do like a get pull to get the version bumps that we do for you. So I know version numbering is always slightly confusing because we try to keep it even in release and odd in devel. So when the release happens, Nitesh and Hervé run some scripts and we'll bump the versions of all the software packages. So just make sure to pull that so that there's not a conflict later on.
All right. Yeah, that would have been my next question.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so apart from that, I don't think I have any further questions. Yeah, so thank you.
I think I would say that the key thing is alertness. So if you do see anything coming up, warnings or an email from the team, that you're able to respond and not let things linger that are problematic. But if you're building clean and so forth, then it is true that I think you may just be able to sit back and do other things.
Also maybe slightly related to that, I'm not sure if it's in the scope of this discussion, but sometimes when I build locally, I see some errors coming up in the BioC checks that I'm using, basically. But these usually are errors that are found upstream. So that are not, I think, directly errors due to my package, but things that will get resolved later while other packages are maturing. So I was just wondering, I'm following the Devel mailing list as well, and I see a lot of such questions coming up that you always have to answer one by one for each specific case. And I was just wondering, is there any way to get like structure in this to see if similar questions have been asked before on these, quite developmental issues? Yeah, that's something that I'm wondering as a contributor to Bioconductor, how to, best communicate or find information on this.
Laurie, you might have, if you have a comment, please go ahead.
Well, if you had something to say, by all means. I guess the mailing list is somewhat hard to search, and there probably could be improvement somewhere in there. I don't know if anyone had any good solutions for that or not, actually.
Have something specific that you could help to focus the discussion, like what are the upstream problems that...
Yeah, so basically what I did after getting accepted to Bioconductor and passing the checks is to restore a typo and build again. But then when I did that, at one point, I got a single failed build on the only Windows platform because, I guess I have it here somewhere. It was an issue with rtrack layer that was somewhere in, propagated through another package. And that it got resolved without me doing anything. It was probably something upstream. I don't know. I don't know what it was actually. But this can be quite, worrying for users like myself who don't know yet what is going on there. And it's also difficult to know if I have to invest time in fixing this issue myself and if it's possible for me to fix this issue. And I see questions coming up like that in the mailing list. But it's difficult to know what is case specific and what is a more general thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think your point is extremely clear. Martin, I don't know if you have some more comments about it. I do have one.
Yeah, it's kind of funny about how seriously you take those warning messages, whether they're something that you must act on or whether you can just slough them off. And I think that there's almost like this culture of you must address each of these issues that's developed maybe because of CRAN and so on. But I'm not sure what the Bioconductor stance on that is, so I'll defer to Vince.
Yeah, I think it's an open issue, and I think it's a serious one for developers. And if you're very conscientious about it, it can be unnerving. And I'd like to be able to give you better data on exactly where a problem is arising. We're working on this now. I've started kind of a dashboard that will help us monitor different aspects of the build process, including the types of errors that are common, the origins of those errors, and so forth. It is not a very straightforward problem to define the events and then propagate information about them to everybody who could use it. But we are working on that. And I don't know if there are people interested in ecosystem type reasoning, I'd be happy to have your help. There's a lot of interesting software out there, BioC package tools and package dep, and there's something that builds graphs related to the entire ecosystem. So we're able to make use of this and I think pin down the sources of problems that might help you decide whether you want to go in and do a deeper investigation. But I think there are some sort of intrinsically difficult aspects to this that we may not have full satisfaction, but we're trying to get more information. So I would hope that maybe in 2 months' time, by then, the developer forum can have a meeting on this specific topic. How do we get information out about the ecosystem and focus on the sources of difficulty? In this case, errors that propagate from one package to another. And I see Charlotte just put something in the chat. If you want to pipe up, might be better.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we kind of started a BioC challenge related to this last year, I guess. So basically trying to figure out, my package fails, does any of the dependencies fail as well? Do the reverse dependencies of that package also fail? So try to kind of illustrate that in a way. So yeah, I mean, any ideas there that can be useful somehow? I mean, that's also.
Would you be able to read out the I don't know, to parse the HTML from any of the on any of all the packages in a way that you say anything upstream of mine up to the bio base, if that fails, then everything would fail. So this means you can slip tight because someone else might be working on that. And if we can actually have this kind of graph of dependencies, I think this is already what this challenge has been doing, and then kind of automatically parsing the status of building and checking for the packages could be probably already, I don't know, just coloring the nodes, you can have some kind of immediate readout and see how far
that's kind of what it's trying to do, making a graph with some colored nodes on whether it's building or not.
Okay.
And I mean, I guess Mike also added Mike and Ave added some things to the package build pages to see whether reverse dependencies of the package fail as well.
Yeah, I often empirically determine my failures because I have enough packages that I can look just by scanning the list of failures. I can sort of figure out where the failure occurs. Like for example, right now, just looking at the list indicates that a lot of the failures are hub related because all the hub related packages are failing, right? So you could also sort of work your way back up, right, to look at the sort of common dependent, like from the tree. From the dependency tree, work your way back up to find the common dependencies. So if it's like, for example, if everything's red, usually S4 vectors has failed, right? That's usually how I sort of figure it out. So yeah, you could definitely do stuff like that where you just work your way back up. Because sometimes the relevant package itself might not be failing, but because it made like breaking changes, it breaks all of its dependencies. So like having an empirical sort of bottom-up approach can be effective to resolve those.
Yeah, the changes that Hervé's put on the build reports, they really help someone who's a developer understand if they've accidentally broken all of their dependent packages. So it shows you both the status of your package, but also everybody that directly depends upon that package, which is really great as a sort of dashboard. Basically, if I commit a change today and suddenly 100 packages go red tomorrow, the likelihood is it's my fault and not something else in the build system. And that used to be quite difficult to do, to try and check all of those packages kind of individually and look up what they were doing and things. And Hervé's put it all on one page. So I just go to the HDF5 page and I can see everybody that depends on that, or the biomark page and see all those. So that's really helpful and hopefully kind of might speed up some of these instances where if somebody breaks your package accidentally and you just get a red light and you don't know what's happened, it can alert the original developer or the committer of the kind of mistake or problem or whatever it is. So hopefully this kind of helps people track down when something inadvertent has happened.
You know, it would also be cute having an automated mailing list for your upstream for your downstream dependencies. So you can just send an email and just say, hey guys, you know, can you fix all this to all the relevant maintainers, rather than sort of swamping BioC to build with a lot of noise. That would be cute.
Interesting. I've been looking at some automated email after talking with the JOSSers for people reviewing package reviews. So I can look at maybe some automated, maybe that's something to play around with too, because I already scraped some of the landing pages for information for other projects. So that would be an interesting addition, maybe in BioC package tools or something like that.
Coming right back to Sharon's original point as well, I have some rules of thumb for when if I get a red light, when do I start actually looking into it? And like if I just see it one day and I know I didn't make any changes, I'm probably going to wait at least one more build cycle and see if it just disappears. Sometimes it's a transient thing where the builder just falls over for whatever reason. So I don't get too worried about it until it's been there probably for a week, particularly if I've not been making any changes. If I push something and then it's red tomorrow morning, then it's a sign I didn't check it properly. So yeah, I have a few rules of thumbs for that. And I guess as Aaron says, sometimes you just get familiar with the error message that's being printed and you know where it came from, and you might know whether that developer, and this all comes with experience, right? You might know if that developer is an active maintainer and is probably just working on it this week and they'll fix it by next week. Or if it's some long dead package that you know has not been touched for many release cycles, and if it starts going red, that's a bad thing because there's probably actually nobody looking after it and something upstream of it has caused the problem. So yeah, that's not a great help for, that mostly comes from intuition and experience, right? But those are my kind of approach to when I bother to start digging into the red lights on the dashboard.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, as you said, that's really a matter of experience. So, I mean, it's something junior software developers need to grow in, and that's also their own responsibility. But yeah, I think it would just be very convenient, both from a software developer point of view as for maintainers, like this forum, let's say. To have like this kind of information shared in some way, right? So that you have guidelines in some way, and it can be very brief, but for junior software or software developers in general, so they know, right? So now I see that there are things I don't have to worry about, but if you don't have the experience to know that, and these are things that are not, discussed. It's very difficult to know what to worry about and what not to worry about. That's all I'm saying.
I think your point is well taken. And there's this term cadence, and what I'm hearing is that people have different cadences for responding to these events, and the fact that the ecosystem gets built as a whole on a frequent basis is a somewhat unique characteristic of Bioconductor, I think. And, the idea of democratizing aspects of the build process so that you could get valid data immediately for the snapshot of the ecosystem that you're contributing to is on everybody's mind, but I don't think it's very clear how to do it, because building the whole thing, including all the vignettes, and understanding exactly where your package impinges on some other package and vice versa is still a little, it's a big problem, I think. And I don't see a solution to that in the near term. So it's going to be still improvised. And as you say, sharing information among people and making it as sort of up to the minute as possible is probably the best we can do at this point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's also just what I meant with the mailing list. Like I could have sent an email for that, but it would just be another one-to-one conversation added to that list, and it could be very trivial, and it probably would have been. So it's wasting your time basically for
email is
something
still
that
cheap,
I
I
didn't know
know.
I
So
didn't have to worry about. So yeah.
I welcome the emails. I don't think noise on the BioC develop is a big problem at this point. So, the more the merrier at this point.
It occurs to me. It occurs to me that one thing you could do is to make a tsne of packages based on their dependencies, and then like highlight them on their success or failure stat, and then you just look at your neighboring. Like you can just literally zoom in and look at your neighboring packages and see whether they're all red, and you're like, oh, there's probably a common cause of failure, right, for all of these packages. And then you could also imagine like lassoing those packages, and then it shows you the common dependencies for all of those packages. That might be an interesting project for anyone who wants to.
It's not a joke. There is a good package dependency graphics package out there. I don't remember the name of it, but we do use it. And it not only does some of the things you're talking about, but one of the important things it does is run covar to see what the coverage of the unit testing is. It's probably PackageNet, as you say, Federico. So it'll color the nodes depending on whether there's good coverage for unit testing. And of course, I think, knowing that your package is passing your own unit tests should be an important step in reducing these sorts of propagations of error. So I think we should keep this discussion going and try to build up the information set so that people have, the type of information that will reduce this anxiety and uncertainty about whether their changes are causing problems.
Unrelated to the finding out whether something is working or not, what I found particularly useful PackageNet for was also to understand how a package works. So if it's not yours and you want to understand how the internal functions might be internally called, instead of just having to do the whole thing by hand, which can be a very nice exercise as well, so pedagogical thing, but sometimes you just don't have the time to do that, and you want to have a one snapshot. And I think PackageNet, it has this super nice one function that generates a rich report, and that's all you need to do. So big kudos to the authors of that package.
I think in more immediate. In a more immediate.
No. Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was proposing a slight change of topic, but if we want to stay on that, and I'm happy to go later.
I was going to comment about maybe we could have a FAQ for new developers where we put all of our rules of thumb in one central location so that Jordan can consult it, and maybe if it was trivial, that document was there and he was be able to find it.
Mm-hmm. Laurie, I had another question. Say with the release ahead of us, are there no deprecated packages this round? So I got a scare last time because I had a couple of favorites of mine that were listed into the deprecation.
So we'll do the final list of deprecations in like another week or week and a half because I'm still waiting on just a couple. But we do announce them and the current ones that are deprecated. So this is the current list of 313. It was also on the mailing list too, but that's the support site's easier for me to find right now.
Okay.
And it has it broken down on if it was maintainer or if it was unresponsive. So I'm waiting on just a couple other ones too that may or may not get added to that list last minute, but then anything after this point that we identify as unresponsive, unless they have no reverse dependencies, will probably get deprecated immediately after the release in 3.14. So these are the packages that will continue to be deprecated in 3.13, and they'll be immediately removed on release, so they won't appear in 3.14 right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I checked it out later to see if I should be scared of losing something.
We tried to make it better practice this release cycle too because of that issue. I tried, as I was deprecating packages, to reach out to at least reverse dependencies. So hopefully there aren't any surprises to packages that depend on any of these, because we tried to add that into the practice as well.
I was going to ask if you do that, because I've realized that some of packages that my boss his name is the email list, and it will become mine when he realizes they've been deprecated, I guess. But there's this kind of cascade where something got deprecated this time, and then when it gets removed, another package which currently exists will become broken, and then will get deprecated. And I guess I'm trying to work out whether we can keep ahead of the curve and stabilize all of them, or whether it's worth just removing the whole bunch. But as it stands, there's going to be this kind of 2-year wave where one kind of key dependent data package or something gets removed, and then everything kind of cascades down. So yeah, I just wondered whether you contacted people, but it sounds like you do. I guess that's a lot of work. That's a long list, and then you have to contact the kind of tree underneath that. That must be a lot of emails to send.
Yeah, so we didn't in the past. And then that was part of the complaint. And we had the debate about it too, of being a little more stringent about it, because in truth, if a package is broken or non-responsive or not working and we end up deprecating it, feasibly the other packages are broken too, but like maybe not, right? Because if it's only like a suggest or something of that nature, depending on where it was breaking, if the build system could still install it and it got through the install stage, even though it was failing in build and check, if what was actually failing wasn't used in the dependency package, it wouldn't be failing, right? But then, yes, you would get caught off guard of all of a sudden a package was removed. So we tried to make it a better policy this year, or this release cycle. I can't guarantee that I didn't let a couple slip through, but I tried to email reverse dependency. Yes.
Which case, if there's no more questions about the release cycle, thanks very much, Laurie, for that kind of comprehensive overview of everything. It's been really great. And thanks, Sharon, as a new camera on speaker. Thank you very much for turning up. Your one comment led to 20 minutes of discussion, right? And I think we covered quite a lot of topics, so that was great. Hopefully, we haven't scared you off, and you'll come along next month as well. And thanks everybody for contributing. Yeah, have a good rest of your day. Better go and have some dinner in Germany. Yeah, see you all next month.